Our rivalry games are some of our easier games, rivalry games. That's usually our hardest games. And then you play this middle of the schedule where you're playing ranked opponents, teams that expect to win 9 games. You're playing legendary coaches. You're playing dark horse Heisman candidates. You're playing the best new team in the Big Ten. The middle, higher upper chunk of this schedule is insane. You're going to have possibly 7 teams that win 9 games on the schedule.
Welcome back to the ANF Podcast. Today we're going to do a season preview, and how we're going to do that is move through a ranking of the position groups, and then we're going to rank the difficulty of the schedule. What we want to break out in that is essentially where are the weaknesses and strengths of this team, how is that going to interact with the various talents of the teams we're going to play, and then try and put together a summary of what to expect, where are the high watermarks, where are the low watermarks, where are the possible pitfalls of this season.
So we're going to kick it off, and we're going to start with the first draft of the position groups. We break these out in a much different way. We're going to have actually 11 separate groups. We break out tackles to interior offensive line, safeties and corners are split up. We're going to try to give as much depth and as much insight to each group based on the last 5 years of recruiting and people have been developed in the last few years. I'm going to start with safeties. I think this is a kind of surprising group to go with, given that you lost Castro last year, but the verbiage that keeps on popping up in my head is versatile. And that starts with our strong safety, Wampa, moving to free safety. I think this gives Phil Parker the best, most athletic free safety he's had, and since the first last scholarship safety he's had in Lomax. And so this is the first versatile piece where you're not going to be scared about putting X in the box, rolling him down. You're not going to be worried about putting him manned up on a tight end or a running back. And it really allows Iowa to have a new chess piece move for Phil Parker and this defense. Where are we going to put X on the field? And he's not guaranteed to play that kind of high free safety spot every single position. And I think that plays out also as our strong safeties and our cash as well. We bring in Entringer as our cash player and Lutmer as our strong safety. Once again, these guys are not just safety builds. They have corner skills. I would feel very comfortable with Lutmer and Entringer in man-to-man concepts, match concepts where they have to run with a slot receiver. And I think all 3 players, looking at them, they all can do multiple things, and they all whack too. So you're going to have a very physical group that's going to be playing the flats, playing over the middle of the field, but they also all can cover. So that's why I'm going with them first. I just really like that 3 starting pair. I think it's probably been in the 2022 and 2023 class, this would probably be 3 of my top 4 recruits of evaluating them. So I'm really excited to see where this group goes.
I think the interesting note for them is Lutmer and Entringer both got on the field as dime corners in their original, playing time, both in that, 6 DBs, man-to-man. That really spells out that they feel comfortable in man-to-man sets. And what that means is you're going to be in a lot of cover 3 with them where they play in that slot role, where they have two-way goes against receivers. And it's going to put a lot more pressure on X, but X in a middle third responsibilities, you're not really terrified of that scenario. Mm-hmm. I think where the X has the chance to be the most impactful is just his erasure plays. So you've seen so many times where he was able to fill the box and just blow some guy up. Where Quinn was a great player, and Quinn did a great job of getting the defensive line. There's stories about him calling defenses for 2 or 3 games against Michigan, doing a hell of a job in that space. But where he struggled was solo tackles, where he would occasionally get carried. He needed combo tackles to get guys down. I think where that differentiator comes in with X is just that ability to tackle. Mm-hmm. And I don't see X as NFL safety, but I really think he's going to transition to the linebacker position in the NFL. You're going to probably put 10 more pounds on him, and then he's going to be that ideal size and speed for a weak side linebacker in the NFL. And I think all 3 guys that you mentioned are pros. Yeah. So you talk about how is Phil going to action the defense with his skill set. I think he's going to put a lot of pressure on these 3 guys, mm-hmm. and where they're at in their experience and talent. It's going to lead to something pretty good.
Yeah, I think Phil, it usually takes him 3 or 4 games, but he ends up building the defense around his strongest player. You think of 2023 after the Penn State game, we got much more aggressive with Cooper DeJean in aggressive coverage. And I think that's going to be the same transition this year at some point where he's going to see these as 3 players as the playmakers we have to put the most on. And they all have the physical profiles to do it. I think if you're not experienced who Zach Lutmer is, I don't think a lot of fans have, understanding of how good of a player he could be. He probably runs a 4.5. He's prototypical size at 6 feet, I think, 210 now. And he has close to a 40-inch vertical leap watching his basketball film. So that's your strong safety. That's not usually the strong safety build we have. You think of Gino at 5'9", or probably the closest you'd say is Amani Hooker. But this guy's a specimen athlete. He's a touch different than DeJean, but a lot of the stuff he does on the basketball court looks like DeJean. And then you go to Entringer as well. This is our prototypical cash build. He almost looks like a Dane Belton clone. Maybe even a touch more physical than Belton. Belton had insanely loose hips and had fluidity in coverage. We'll see how Endrick can handle that. But all three of them have their own ability to kind of be the better athletes on the field. This is when you just think about them, it's just a very athletic room as a whole. I think it's time to move on to the next pick.
I'm going to take DNs as my number 2 pick. Maxwell and Ethan Hurkett. It's difficult to understate how important these two guys are going to be to the season. Obviously, 2 Iowa guys, 6th and 5th year seniors. Llewellyn, again, this is going to be a bit of a take, but this season kind of relies on him. Where Iowa really struggled last year was not having a pass rush that could disrupt Childs, disrupt Garbers, Raiola, and then Cook in Missouri. Having a guy in a 4-man front and be able to pressure with just 4 guys is the most important piece of this defense, and it didn't occur last year. Hurkett had his moments, but operating off that blind side and what we've seen from the high watermarks of Max Llewellyn, if he can ascend into that NFL DN that we've routinely produced at Iowa, that is going to change the season. And I think the other integral piece of this is how do you take reps off these guys' legs? And I think you can get into that a little bit yourself.
I think you said it perfectly. The defensive line will define this season because of who we're playing as well. And you're going to play 10 teams that can step back with a solid quarterback, solid receiving core, and a strong offensive line. And we saw last year, I think the film that's going to be out there is the key against Iowa is not to run into their teeth, to run inside zone, to take the flats. The key is actually to be aggressive on first and second down in passing situations. And I think Missouri did a great job of that, knowing that we wouldn't be in a pass rush situation. And Cook stood back there for 8 seconds sometimes with no pressure in his face.
Michigan State did a great job.
UCLA did it. And the teams that, were kind of mid-tier teams that exploited us, they just essentially said, if you're going to give us a 15-yard route against an off coverage and our quarterback's not going to have pressure, we're going to throw it early. So I completely agree. I think pressure, and what I would point out is Hurkett and Llewellyn obviously are great players. They deserve a lion's share of the reps. But you have Merriweather and Brian Allen and Joseph Anderson and Chineke and Epineza all in your depth pieces. You have 5 guys. I think most Power 5 teams would feel comfortable playing a series or 2. You cannot have Hurkett and Llewellyn play 80% of these snaps this year, even though we expect them to be all Big Ten level and stopping the run and playing the perfect form. You need to take the load off those guys in terms of snap counts so they can exert more energy throughout the season. And I think Graves, we'll talk about D-tackle, that goes back to that as well. But we need to rely on the depth we've developed and how well this room has been recruited. I think truly you have to argue that this might be one of the deepest rooms in college football. Obviously there's going to be crazy rooms at Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson and all the Oregon. But I would have a hard time believing that other rooms have retained 7 deep. You bring in a 5-star to sit behind 6 guys that were high 3 stars to low 4 stars to high, mid 4 stars. And I think we evaluate them as all 4 stars. I don't think any of them you would actually evaluate as a 3-star, at this point. And so it's a really deep room, and I think they need to rely on that aspect of the room rather than, grind out an 85% snap thing for the starters, because obviously they're going to play the technique correctly, but you got to let them rest where they can exert more energy throughout this game.
Yeah, it comes down. It's a huge tip of the cap to Kelvin Bell for the retention.
100%.
To be able to sell to these guys that you only need 1 year of production to make the NFL. And there's a benefit to that where they're only going to see you play at your highest level of football. If you've been repping the same techniques for 5 years and then you get on the field and you look like a fantastic player, they don't care that you only played 13 games if you had high level production, and they know that you come with the Iowa stamp. So I think retaining Brian Allen and Kavion Merriweather, or not Kavion, but
Merriweather. Yeah.
Merriweather. That just speaks to what this Iowa football program is about, and hopefully that pays dividends this year, as you mentioned, with just being able to take reps off of your starters And hopefully those guys can make plays as the season goes along.
Yeah,
And then, God forbid any injuries, you're going to have guys that are upperclassmen, they're capable and strong, and able to know how to play the technique.
I think it's the Brian Allen story's got to be one of the most unique stories in college football. There can't be many fourth-year players that are like Brian Allen that haven't seen a start yet. It is similar to what Van Ness went through and Chauncey Golston went through for a long time. But I think for Brian Allen, what I want to see is when we get to 3rd and 6 or above, I think maybe even 3rd and 5 is the threshold where Phil will call it. We'll sub out our D tackles. We'll keep Graves on generally, but we'll sub out our bigger D tackle this year, which will probably be Pace. And we'll sub in a D end to run either the right D end or the D tackle. I think Brian will play right D tackle if I had to guess at the 3 tech. And I want to see him get every one of those reps because I think it's going to be so important for this D-line depth to include him almost like a Mike Daniels role in 2009, where he comes in and he can exert 20-play energy every pass rush. And they should really rely on this depth. I think I'm belaboring the point, but if you're going to have these guys and you retained them, you got to play them now and let them really benefit the starters for having that depth.
Yeah.
I think it's time to move on to next pick. This is tough. This is where I feel like instantly I'm not confident enough to draft anyone 3, but I think the room that I'm most excited for and a room that's really important for Iowa is running back. If you are going to be a possession team, if you're going to be a team that wants to rush for 200 yards and kind of grind out wins versus teams that maybe have more talent than you, your running back room needs to be elite. It can't just be, some years where we've had some middle
IKM, Tokes and Rabade.
Yeah, just some good backs. You're Torrin Young. That you just need that to be a higher. And truly, Betts has done an incredible job. This is Betts' room now. 100% is obviously he's moved on, but this is his recruiting base. Unbelievable eye for talent. Unbelievable way to bring kids out from the South up to play for Iowa. And I'm going to highlight Moulton as the guy where Moulton has done everything you want a running back to do in his first 2 years in terms of if I'm going to expect higher returns as a junior and senior, what do I need to see as a freshman and sophomore? He hits the hole harder than any back we've had since we've been following this program closely. And almost too much so. He almost gets ahead of his block sometimes, doesn't allow the play to develop, but he has the understanding if I hit this as full speed, full acceleration, it almost can't go poorly. And you see him kind of pulling that back a little bit, but he has that crazy acceleration to the hole. He was markedly faster to the hole than Caleb Johnson was. And as you progress later in your career, your junior and senior year, what is the one thing we want Moulton to develop? He already has the home run ability. We saw it against Maryland. He has the speed to house a 70-yard run or 50-yard run. But the strength needs to get there. And that's what progresses when you're becoming a 3rd and 4th year running back. Your core, your hips, your legs, all that stuff allows you to break that arm tackle, which goes from a 15-yard run where he has the acceleration to jet engine out to the safety in about a split second. And now you're at 10 yards and you have a 2-way go on a safety. How do you create that into a long touchdown run? Caleb did it by bending and using long arms at the safety level and being Derrick Henry. And obviously the Steelers have invested in to be the next great back for their franchise. Moulton will have to be the Akram Wadley in that type, where Akram, where he got later into his career as a junior and senior, would use slight movements to break arm tackles. And that's where I really view Moulton's strength and where he can get to that 60-yard touchdown run is he gets to that 3rd level and then he uses some sort of slight juke to get this guy off his platform and then arm tackling. And that's where I kind of envision this happening this year. I think he is going to be a great back in this system.
Yeah, I think you have to also mention, Jasmine Patterson as a 3rd-year guy. Probably the toughest SOB on the team, too. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to teach into a guy to run as hard as he does. That's a natural ability of his to have almost no self-preservation gene in him. He's just playing hard. And Moulton isn't going to be your typical power back. He's going to get pulled off the field on short yards for most of the time. He does run hard in those spots. He's had some good short yardage reps. I think, touchdowns against Missouri in short yardage. But Patterson is just so exceptional in that spot and has such, plays with such reckless abandon. You do want to get him on the field. It'll be interesting how the weight helps him be that, helps him in that facet. Another key piece for Patterson, I was thinking about this earlier, is going to be shotgun sets with Gronowski. We'll see how much, this will be something we'll talk about later. We'll see how much we actually want to run QB power with Gronowski. Mm-hmm. It's probably be something you maybe action more against the Penn State and Oregon this year when you really need some short yardage plays. But him as a lead blocker for Gronowski and QB Power, I think that's going to be a skills that he gets to play in just because of the physicality he can play with and the added weight. And I think that's where he's going to fit in really well. He's obviously been a fantastic pass pro run blocker too. You think about that fantastic cutting he had against Iowa State on that long play that Lachey in 2024.
He's just a perfect team player in this role. And that's why I went with Patterson as the second running back, or why I went with running back this high is because of Patterson being the second running back. And I think it is the best second running back we've had since Mackay in 2020. I'm really interested to see how that weight impacts him. Obviously, already a physical guy. Is it going to slow him down at all? But the way the room sounds like it's going right now, it's an equal competition. Patterson hasn't lost the starting role in Moulton. I think we both predict Moulton will get more carries this year, given that more explosive factor. When you're having a tough time putting up points, you're in 70s last year, what's the easiest way for this offense to score? A 60-yard touchdown run. And I think that's where it'll shake out in the end. They're like, who can actually go for 70 here? I think Patterson can be maybe more efficient in some cases, given the size he has and how hard he runs. But I think that Lester's going to lean to Moulton because he's like, my favorite thing as a coordinator is having a long run. And then moving into the last, part of this positioning room is Terrell Washington and Neal. I think Terrell Washington kind of completes the room. You have Moulton as your outside zone back, mid zone back, Patterson as your power back, and Washington obviously played receiver last year, but now is a third down back. And I think it's someone, when you watch Gronowski's film, he loves to check down. He loves to make that, critical, smart play on 2nd and 10, take a deep shot, and then drop it down. I think Neal and Washington can have a great role being that third down back. And if you want to go into more of a breakdown of Neal, but
yeah, I mean that's just a really important piece of a scope of a full season. You want to take hits off Kamari and Jasmine as much as possible. When you play, if you ever develop a lead later in the game, or if you have a 2-score lead, you're going to want to play Neal, Dahl, Washington, take some reps off. All of them have really strong receiver skills in that that third, fourth running back room too. I think what we saw from Neal is just incredible shiftiness, and then him in the passing game, his receiving ability was at such a high level. It's difficult to see how he won't be utilized in that this year. I don't know if obviously Washington has that ability too, but Neal's just a bigger guy as well. So you don't really have to sacrifice power in your interior runs with Neal, and I think that's why he's going to likely creep up into that fourth, maybe steal some carries from some of the top guys.
Mm-hmm. So next position would be, I think we'd be drafting as D tackle, correct? I think that's the natural spot for this.
Yep. So
you can go first. Yeah, kick it off.
So Graves is likely the high watermark for D tackle in the last decade at Iowa. I think where we're going to see him really take a leap is be able to take plays off of him. So last year we made a large point about this, but that's really where the defense fell apart last year, is just the lack of D tackle depth. You saw Black and Graves have to take plays off where they weren't. You would see them, in the first and second quarter of games, really not make a lot of plays. But then as the game went on, they were able to really expend energy. They would start to dominate. Mm-hmm. And having Pace and Hawthorne added to this group, it's really, you can't understate how important that is to have a redshirt senior in Pace. Was a all-back player, and then Hawthorne, who we've heard, could be a really tremendous D tackle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I still have some insecurity about that. I mean, you're going from 2 D tackles last year that you could play to 3. So that does change the equation. We had a lot of success in 2023 playing 3 D tackles, but one injury or you're in trouble. And what if the transfers don't play the technique correctly? I think that's something we have to expect. You have, D tackle at Iowa is such a unique position, even for a redshirt senior in Pace and Hawthorne that, come from, plenty of snaps and producing. You have to play in a different technique and different style. So I think Pittman as a 4th D tackle is still very important. He had a very rough year last year, which is the point where we essentially just weren't able to play him as a senior. He's a 4th year last year, weren't able to play him. His development is still extremely key for this room to be, possibly drafted at the end of the year as the 2nd or 3rd best room, because you have to rely on him to get 20 snaps a game, 15 snaps a game. You can't have this room where, Graves is grinding out 90 snaps, including pass rush sets. You have to allow him to be the best player in the field. And the way you do that at D tackle is to have him play 65. He's going through double teams and also pass rush, one of our best pass rush generators. You can't have him play the amount of snaps he played last year. So I think that's where I've Graves is clearly incredible, but you have depth, but you don't have guaranteed depth either. So I would let this like room fall, and the reason why I did fall a little bit because that reason of like I do feel good about the bodies. I think they have an opportunity to play well, but D tackle is very unique. It's not something that you pick up easily at Iowa.
It's really how this defense has success too. We made some noise about the DNs being very important this year, but when you allow guys to be double teamed at the point of attack and you're going to play this passive alignment, if those guys are getting moved, this whole defense falls apart insanely fast.
Any football defense falls apart quickly, but especially Iowa, given how far off we play. Right?
Exactly. So it's going to come down to how well those guys play. Think about games against Iowa State, Minnesota, teams that are very patient in their offensive approach. If we have an injury there, or if we aren't getting the level of play we expected out of Pace and Hawthorne, the defense really could take a step back if those guys aren't, ready for game time.
Truly. I think you're up now for the next room.
Yeah, I'll go interior O-line. So because Iowa's going to be such a good shotgun team this year, you talk about Gronowski as a guy that is going to be able to bring extra defenders into the box. You're going to have to account for some level of edge pressure. You're going to want to try and speed up his operation off the edge. What that's going to allow is what we saw against Maryland, where you had that beautiful double team by Jones and Colby that led to the 70-yard closeout run from Moulton. And having Stevens, Jones, Leighton Jones as a backup, Mylinski as a backup, and then Pieper as a starter, that core is really how we're going to build this offense. It's for the average fan, you don't really understand the importance of guard, center, guard, and D tackle play. Almost every game is played through those five guys. Having an exceptionally talented center who's now in his sixth year, having Bo Stevens, who is just an absolute mauler at left guard, and then Pieper has been called out as a freak within college football. That group is going to be how we action most of our zone sets. And with our extended or our reduced sets where you extend your edge and you really protect this interior line and let them work, the whole season comes down to how well these guys play together. And I think just the experience they have together is going to be, pay dividends in the long term. I think it's going to be a really talented group.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be, going back to the recruiting process, I've liked all five of those guys as guards going forward. And truly, if you don't win at guard, center, guard, it's hard to win. You can break down almost any play outside of a deep shot or something like that, or maybe a quick passing. If your guard, center, guard don't win, the play's almost ended instantly. So it's definitely an important piece of the puzzle.
Well, and teams are going to have to line aggressively against this. Like you're going to have to play more players to the edge than you would traditionally would against an Iowa team because of threat of boot run, because of threat of read option, because of threat of QB run. So that's going to bring guys into the slot, and that center of the defense is going to get a little softer. And if you can have really strong play there, that's where you could really, you could see this run game take a huge leap.
Yeah. I think I'm going to move on to the next position group. I'm going to go with linebacker. This surprised me. I re-ranked this 5 times. But in the end, when you just look at Harrell and Shire's experience, and truly our expectations for Shire have been high since 2022. This is a guy who's had to sit behind Nick Jackson and Benson and Justin Jacobs. He's always just been that second guy, but he's flashed so many times. I think even like a spring game in 2022, we're like, this guy's got to see the field now. And now him and Harrell are in the same situation. They're going into their 5th fall camp. 5th. With the same position coach, the same defensive coordinator, running the same drills, playing the same plays. And what has Iowa done over the last 3 middle linebackers and weak side linebackers? Produced all Big Ten level players, produced guys that are going to go play in the NFL. We like these guys as a recruiting profile as well. I think Harrell much more like Jay Higgins. Shire is kind of, I think, closer to Benson, I'd say, in terms of just speed and just like quickness to the hole.
Just quick identification too. That was what I picked up on his recruiting tape back in the day. I was like, man, this guy's really got the eyes for it.
Exactly. So like, given their physical profiles, they're not big guys. They're not gonna be like Campbell. It's gonna be more like a Jay Higgins type and a Benson type. Someone's not gonna circle them as this is a 2nd round linebacker, but given the amount of time they've been developed by Wallace, I assume them, at least Shire's gonna play at all Big Ten level. I think Harrell has an opportunity too, because his lifting numbers in high school were insane, and that just jumps out to you on his film. He's an extremely strong guy. And we mentioned in our defensive preview for how Phil Parker schemes his defense, the middle linebacker doesn't really have to play outside the box a lot. It's something that we don't require that guy to be outside the tackles on most situations, even in his zones. What do you need then to be? A moose. And I want to see him square up fullback, tight ends, square up any lead blocker, square up guards, lock out, play the technique he's played for 5 years. I have a hard time believing he's not going to play that technique well. And the system also kind of defends him, as we mentioned. So I think linebacker, I think you can be concerned about tackle, corner, because they just, there's kind of some concerns there. I think linebacker is one of those positions where you have these two starters and you have that freak redshirt freshman class. I think this should be appropriately ranked here.
It's the same insecurity we had with Jay Higgins just because you hadn't seen it yet. Yeah. And similar to Jay Higgins' career arc, when he first got on the field, he looked a little bit slow-footed. He looked like he was, playing a little slow. Harrell obviously we've only really seen Harrell in action one time against UCLA.
Weird spot.
You're not anticipating to play that day. Obviously had some slow feet moment, but I'm just going to chalk it up to the same thing that we saw with Higgins. You're really a fish out of water. Mm-hmm. Your brain's not picking up as fast as you want to. I think coming into a season as a starter, as a fifth-year guy, as an Iowan, you think about how many Iowans they have in this starting lineup up front. You got the whole 3 of the 4 D linemen are Iowa guys,
yeah,
and then Harrell and Shire both small town Iowa too. So it's setting up as a really tough bunch. Really excited to see how Shire fits in too. Mm-hmm. It's a guy we've been waiting on for a long time. It's kind of shitty that Nick Jackson and Higgins came back for his career arc, but I think the benefit,
but he gets it now.
The benefit to the team though is now you have 2 senior linebackers who will have expectations to play in the NFL and only have 13 games to prove it. Mm-hmm. So that clock, the minute the season starts, is ticking for those guys. And you have questions about will. We talk about will a lot on this podcast. The will for these guys to play hard in close games in the third and fourth quarter isn't going to die. Mm-hmm. These guys are seniors. Why Kirk loves to rely on seniors is because that clock is ticking and there isn't a tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And, some of these guys, Herc is going to be a fringe NFL guy. Both these LBs are probably not going to be running high enough numbers to guarantee an NFL spot. This might be the last football they're playing.
Yeah, it might be the last 12 games that they have on the schedule.
How do you want to go out? You put in 5 years of work. What are you willing to play? How hard are you willing to play? And that's going to be really exciting. I'm getting amped up. Think about that. It's like those guys are going to be playing hard.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah. All right. I think you can do maybe a quick piece on the redshirt freshman, but
yeah, I mean, you don't want to go to them.
No. But I'd more so highlight them in the recruiting process. If you haven't watched the recruiting video,
you should go back and watch it. But Buffington and Reese and Weiskopf, it's sad that Keeter's not here. Keeter, I feel like, would be, really competing for that middle linebacker spot. Mm-hmm. But the redshirt freshmen all have exceptional talent. Yep. And obviously Reese has had some good press this offseason, but you can't dispel even, Weiskopf and Buffington too. Both tall guys who can really run and put the weight on. That group is going to be a year away, but it really helps with the depth. Again, injury concern is always a high linebacker. Having those pieces there where you don't want to go to them because you don't really want to play the learning game early in the season with redshirt freshmen. You want to rely on your seniors who are going to be, as we talked about, that clock's ticking. There's no questions about what their responsibilities are in game day.
Yeah.
But they have the talent to imprint on the game for sure.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to hopefully we get some early blowouts. We get to see them and they get their feet wet because that's going to be a really fun group to see develop.
100%. Anything else on linebackers?
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah.
I'll take a QB. And it's sad we took this long because Grano's likely NFL. And why? I think the biggest thing we want to highlight with Grano, we talked about a lot of his talents within the passing game, how he does a really good job of surviving the pocket. His deep end ball is fantastic. It's going to be a huge part of Leicester's attack. His experience is going to really allow him to be intelligent with how he actions the game. How young QBs can sometimes play outside themselves early is they don't have belief in the process. And when you have 55 starts, you've won 2 national titles, and you've been an MVP of a team, you know how to let the scheme play out. You know how to let the game unfold. Mm-hmm. If you get into the late third and early fourth and you're down, then you can start acting outside the scheme. You're going to have to start making some plays. I think that's the biggest benefit of having Grano's experience is that aspect of he's not going to panic early. Mm-hmm. But what I want to highlight is his ability in the run game is going to change this offense. Not only does he have the speed to get to the edge, and we've talked about how that really helps add defenders to the box, it requires alignment aggression, which is everything in college football. If you can pull guys into the box based off of your personnel, that allows for more explosive plays in the passing game, more explosive plays in the run game if you can get interior line movement. But also, his ability in the boot game completely changes his offense. We saw it with Sullivan against Missouri, where if you can get him to the edge clean with a lead blocker, so Ortworth on one particular play goes out in a place to receive a ball, but then turns into a lead blocker. You think about all those times where we could get Cade to the edge, but he was clean, but it just didn't matter because he can't go run over a guy. He can't be fast enough to the hole. I think that's where this Leicester scheme really takes a leap, and why Grano is such a perfect guy for the system is because of his ability to be fast enough to the edge, and then his physicality. Then being 235. You're not really worried about him getting teed up by a safety or a corner. He's probably going to be the one delivering the blow. All he has to be is intelligent with getting combo tackled. Do not let guys hold you up and tee off on you. It's going to be everyone's goal is to take them low, pull them up, and then let the brigade come and kill them. So he's done a good job of that. I've watched plenty of tapes where he'll drop low and get off platform and make sure he doesn't take big hits. That's just going to be a very important piece of this. And honestly, the biggest question for me going into the season is how much do we run him in QB power? Is Kirk going to poo-poo that, say, no, preserve this guy? We have to think about this as a 12-game season, potentially longer if there's a playoff involved. Are we going to risk him getting teed up on a QB power early? And you can talk more about that too.
Yeah, I think the one aspect I wanted to highlight was listening to Lester's interview recently. The way he calls the game is wanting to be aggressive every play. And obviously they have an aggressive play call, and then they have a can into a run play or something that's more straightforward. And having a quarterback with 55 starts and watching the way he progresses at South Dakota State and letting the game come to him, that's exactly what you were explaining. That is how we want. It pairs so well with Lester in terms of executing the game plan, as well as there's not a throw in his book or in his bag that I would not be comfortable with. He has a 20-yard out route. He has a 20-yard in route. He has a deep ball that seeds in accurately. It doesn't pop like it should, like a Nate Stanley one or like someone, a great NFL thrower, but he can throw the 40-yard bomb on pretty accurately. He doesn't have, it just feels like every play call in our system we'll feel comfortable calling and then feel comfortable with him executing. So he's a quarterback, a Leicester dream quarterback. And then it allows, all right, what does Iowa look like with good quarterback play? Like, we just don't know what that looks like.
CJ Beathard.
CJ Beathard and honestly Stanley in some games played extremely well. He kind of regressed in 2019, but we haven't seen a full season of good quarterback play. What does that do to a team that's been on the fringe of top 20 with a top 5 defense? Do we steal the one possession games? Do we go and do a 2-minute drill? Do we win a game in the last 2 minutes?
When was the last time
we didn't win a game in the fourth quarter because we were just had the ball or we got to stop
or broke a long run?
So that's where this NFL caliber quarterback, where I truly think he will get drafted in the 6th or 7th round to the Ravens, Eagles, Bills, somewhere he can emulate the starter in a lesser form. I think what I would describe him as is FCS Jalen Hurts. He's not Jalen Hurts in terms of strength and speed, and honestly, his throwing ability is pretty similar, I'd say. It's what Hurts looks like in terms of his ability. But I feel like that's where a lot of these NFL teams grab their backup quarterbacks in. And obviously, he's going to have 68 starts most likely under his belt at that point. Seems like an obvious choice for those programs to do that or those franchises to do that. But I just want to see, can this be a selling point for Iowa at quarterback and Leicester going forward? Because if he has success, we just saw what happened to Indiana. Indiana hasn't done shit for 100 years. And they just brought in Mendoza the year after having a quarterback be successful. Leicester has the opportunity to showcase a pro-style offense that's differentiated with a quarterback that's going to go play in the NFL with the portal where you just grab a kid every year. So this is not only an opportunity to have a great season with Gronowski, but the opportunity to sell quarterback at Iowa for as long as Leicester is here.
And I guess we got to talk about the backups. I think Hank Brown has the ability to be the best backup QBs Iowa's kicked out there in a while. Obviously, Sullivan was more so, a balance with Cade. It wasn't really a true backup, but Hank Brown has the arm talent you want to see within Lester's system, has actually some legs to him too, which, added benefits to that, has prototypical size. Lester's obviously spoke about him having a good camp, so it'll be interesting how that plays out. I don't think if you have, God forbid you have an injury to Grano, I don't think the season's completely moot if you have to play Hank Brown. It obviously changes the picture dramatically, given the experience differential.
His legs are so, right, too. Like, you don't really want to run him a lot.
No.
So that changes your playbook by 30% right there.
But you could protect him by throwing 20-yard outs the entire game, too.
You could, yeah.
And that's a huge piece of a backup QB. Is it, okay, we don't want to really put the game in your hands, but we're not going to let you throw it away either.
The Deacon Hill playbook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
how about you just missile what to the 40 yards downfield?
We're just going to send an 80-yard bomb.
Yeah.
Got a 5% chance of hitting.
Yeah, but you're not going to throw a pick.
Yeah.
I think it's time to move on to the next one.
Yeah, but you.
This just feels like now we're entering the territory of
Insecurity.
And I think it's O-tackle, corner, receiver, tight end.
Yep.
I'm going to go with tight end. I'm going with just the floor is very high at this point. I think Ostrenga and Ortworth are going to be very productive. I don't expect any of those guys to come out and have a Mackey type season or like an all Big Ten season. But the addition that we are very excited about is DJ Vonamy. And watching his film, it just gets you seeing flashes of Laporta, flashes of Kittle, where you have this rangy 6'3", he's a little undersized, 210, but God, there's so many plays on this film where you just see that flash of pure athleticism and in terms of acceleration for that size and hands. I think you can go more detail on it, but
yeah, I mean, the one redeemable quality I had as a football player was my hands, and he made me feel like I didn't know how to catch a football.
Yeah,
and that's where you see these things pop up. Like, I think about back to Zach Lutmer film. He was rated as like a 5.5 3-star by Rivals, and we were like, what the hell are we looking at? Like, I know I'm seeing it, but you're not seeing it from an offers perspective. You're not seeing it from a rankings perspective. This is the exact same thing where my eyes are telling me this guy is going to be NFL. And it's crazy to say. He was a 2-star recruit with offers from Colorado State, came to Iowa as a walk-on from Carroll, Iowa. But what he does incredibly well is his timing when it comes to having late hands, body control. He has so many plays where he rotates and lets the ball fall in. I think what really just put me over the edge with him, because you can see the accelerations there, and that's such a huge piece of guys playing that size.
Yeah.
But he takes a kickoff. He doesn't take it for a touchdown, but there's this moment where he bends the play. And we always talk about Caleb Johnson having this bend run to the edge, where just like when you see it, you're like, God, there's something to that.
Laporta had that too.
Exactly. And I don't want to put too much pressure on him because he's just got on scholarship. He's going to be a redshirt freshman. But I fully anticipate him by game 4 this year to be the primary target in the passing game for Iowa. And that might not come to fruition. It might take him one more year. But there's no doubt in my mind within that U position, especially how we run that, that tight end cut where they get those guys to the edge and play action.
Perfectly.
It's exactly what you want. A guy with incredible pace to him. And then he's going to have hands where if you throw anything in a contested area, tight ends, how you make your name is contested catches and not dropping any passes. Obviously, Ostrenga has really good hands, but he just doesn't have that wiggle that we saw with Vonamy. And, my anticipation is that we're going to see a lot of them, and we might see a lot of them game 1.
Yeah.
And I think
it's going to be almost undeniable. And if he would have been, we didn't see his film.
It's sad we didn't.
Because when we would have drafted him probably top 3 in that class, like almost guaranteed. It's just such a unique body type that we've seen succeed so many times at Iowa. And it's what we saw in Hoffman. You have this big, rangy guy that's at 210. You can strap up to 240. But Hoffman transferred for a reason. I think some 2-star came in and was better. And honestly, the film looks better. He accelerates better. He's got the wiggle is exactly
the hands too. The hands I can't get over.
Yeah.
That is such an integral part of tight end play. And
to truly differentiate Iowa's offense and the Shanahan scheme is to find the hybrid player. And that's exactly what we always draft that player, usually in our recruiting drafts. I always like Vanderbush, Leaper, Hoffman, because this is how Iowa can create a different type of player in college football. Like no one else really develops that type of athlete, and it fits this mold. You think of Juszczyk and Kittle and Puka Nacua. What do they all do? They all can run routes and they all can block and be physical. And in the Shanahan offense, you need that type of versatile athlete. When you put them on the field, a team heavies up, you run the ball. A team lightens up. When a team heavies up, you throw the ball. When a team lightens up, you run the ball. And that's how you actually have a piece that Ohio State has it all the time. They have Jeremiah Smith where they're scaring the crap out of you. They have Nick Singleton at Penn State. But you can create a versatile tight end piece. That is actually how you differentiate this offense. It's what Barnes and this scheme should be looking for in the recruiting base at all times. Where do we get our Kyle Juszczyk? Where do we get this weird hybrid tight end that can insert and block and then also sneak out for pass routes and match up against linebackers and safeties? I think Woods is the other piece. I think now you have two of them on the roster. Iowa's versatile tight end piece can change this entire look of this offense very quickly if you can play that game that at the NFL level has produced, Super Bowl contending teams because they've had this type of like unique aspect. And Kittle was no name, but I think broke the tight end yards record because he just was this weird odd piece in a system that needs that piece. So I think it's Vanami's the first step of that. Woods is another one, but this is something that we should recruit at an ongoing basis as almost our number one offensive threat behind running back that needs to be sneaky good. And I think Vanami has unlimited potential to be, a very scary threat. As a scary threat.
A game changer.
A game changer for Iowa. So
exactly.
It's very exciting.
So I'll take receivers now. It's going to be such an interesting room because the expectations are there. I think there's a lot of subtle confidence within the Iowa fan base around the receiver room. People from outside the Iowa fan base, look at who's returning, your previous numbers the last 10 years. They can scoff at it. Mm-hmm. But I think what you have to look at is RVZ. As a true freshman, had some high watermarks, had some fantastic plays early in the season. As the season progressed, really struggled against Ohio State and Michigan State, struggled to be physical at the point of attack. I think that added weight is going to be everything for him. You see so many times with receivers, dramatic jumps from freshman to sophomore year because of the strength addition. That added 12 pounds is going to change everything for him as an X receiver. Mm-hmm. Within Lester's scheme, X receivers are the integral piece. You really want to be able to, in these reduced sets, essentially create an interchange between these tight ends and X receivers. X's can get over the middle, can take the top off, but then also can be really dynamic in how they can crack on linebackers, DNs, and safeties. With Howard and RVZ now being at 215, these guys are going to be what allowed Michigan to win a national title. Mm-hmm. When you watch those old Michigan tape with J.J. McCarthy, you had 10 guys blocking incredibly well. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be truly what I was offering this year is dominant run play with a dominant running QB, these guys have to block their ass off to get to the point where I was going to be a playoff contending team. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to be dynamic receivers in the pass game. I think we can just kind of not put a kibosh to it, but the X receivers are going to be contested catch guys. Yeah. But really where they're going to differentiate themselves is in the blocking game, which is odd to say for a receiver, but it's very important for this scheme. Moving to the pass catchers that we anticipate to actually, be more of the playmakers on this team, I think Phillips and Gill are going to, really action this group and be very important for 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, where you're going to get man-to-man routes where teams can't, be overly aggressive in, blitz packages and, play zero coverage on the back end because these guys have the ability to get over the top on you. Mm-hmm. Then after they catch the ball, what can you do from a yak perspective? Mm-hmm. I think both those guys offer real dangers to teams. And I think we're not going to get a lot of, we'll see Kids Day practice today, how well they play, but we're not going to get a lot of talk out of the coaches about Phillips and KJ. You're going to want to keep that quiet until the big moment arises.
Yeah. I think you mentioned Gill and Phillips, but also Parker's in that group as well. You said it late, KJ, but those three are your scatty pass catchers. They have to be the ones that win against man-to-man. I think what Lester will use consistently will be motion to get those guys freed up because they're all have the ability to, shake somebody once they don't have hands on them. They're not the biggest guys, but if you can use motion, I think we used motion a good amount with Gill last year. Mm-hmm. That's how you really utilize them into then a 10 or 15 yard in route or, some sort of zig And that's kind of the key piece. I think you said it perfectly. The RVZ, Bowie, Howard, blocking, contested catches. They're not going to run by somebody. We've seen that already. Like the speed is not insane.
It's not
from our ex receivers.
Yeah. If they have,
that's where development comes into. Bud Meyer, if you're going to look at him as a receiver coach, can you get Bowie and Howard and RVZ not to drop balls? Because they're going to have guys on their back. They're going to have guys in their pocket when they're catching the ball. You should be only practicing with these guys contested catches. How to use your body, how to use your hands, how to catch, not using, by pinning it, but using your hands to catch it. It kind of reminds me of the running back room where there's expectations because of the puzzle pieces you have. You have your X's that can be one portion of an alpha receiver. They can run certain routes and be, have a strength there. You have your pass catchers and kind of route runners and Gil, Parker, and Phillips. And then you have your kind of scatty gadget guys in Weegen and Terrell Washington will kind of step into that role as well. And maybe even Dahl. I think Dahl kind of falls into that athletic room and like gadget room. Lester will have opportunities to put all those guys in good positions. But when it comes down to playing Penn State and Oregon and playing teams that might just man you up or get you in third and long a lot, that's where this room could fall apart. Because let's say you're throwing RVZ, Gil, and Weegen out there, the same group you threw out last year that collectively only had like 60 catches, I want to say. Why is that going to be a much different equation? Even though we have a great but better quarterback, those guys still have to get separation and get by somebody. So I think this is a receiver room that needs to play on schedule. Usually you hear quarterbacks that have to play on schedule. I think this receiver room is in the same boat. And I said it last year, I'll say it again. I think KJ Parker is the key to the receiving room. I think his development and his inserting into the offense, I think he's the most complete receiver we have on this team, given he's a little bigger than, he's bigger than Phillips. I don't think he's big as Gil, but just his film in his senior year of high school and his junior year of high school, it just screams like this is the guy we need to develop the most and kind of push to the forefront of this room. And if he become a factor of 30 catches this year, I think this room changes dramatically. It just depends.
You just need a man beater.
You need a man beater.
It's a very simple equation.
You need someone that catch a 5-yard slant and go for 20.
Yeah,
I think that's something he could do too. He's just that scatty, great route runner, great hands, body control. He has a complete set to him. He's not, he's 5'10" still, but he's someone that needs to be entered this year.
Yeah, and then we talk about, again, a lot of jabs in the run game, but there needs to be a jab aspect. If teams are going to align too aggressive or give you man-to-man sets on first and second down, you need to have trust that some guy can get open and make a play.
Yes.
And
I trust him.
I really think it's going to be Phillips and Parker. Those are going to be those two guys.
Yeah.
So moving forward we got corner and tackle left.
I think you have to go tackle here. I think tackle should have been way higher. I think this is that kind of skidded. Because Dunker is going to be probably maybe the only first or second round draft pick on this team.
He won't be the first or second round. He'll probably
as a guard. Yeah. So that's maybe why you can argue it. It's not. He's never going to play tackle in the NFL. Yeah. But if you look at the team's roster, he's like the only first team All-American in most of the and we're like drafted in the second to last.
Yeah,
not drafted in his room. And the reason why we're doing that, we can explain it still and like have good reasoning behind it why this room fell is because you missed out on Caden Proctor, you missed on Nick Brooks. And the room looks like this because of that now. You should have an All-American at left tackle as well. And Dotzler is someone we definitely liked in the recruiting process when, 2021 class, I want to say, maybe 2022.
Yeah, been around a long time.
Yeah, 2022, I want to say. I think he's a senior now. So Dotzler is Richmond. I don't know how good of a comparison that will be in the end, but this is a rangy 6'7" athletic tackle. He's not going to be a mauler in the run room that Richmond had kind of turned it into as a senior and why he's in the NFL right now. But this is your kind of like quick guy. And then Lauk is someone I always expected to play guard as a senior, a redshirt junior.
Great shover.
He's
great run blocker.
Really strong kid, really densely built. Like I would love him at guard, but having him at tackle, it just wasn't what my initial evaluation was. But I think I had the same kind of thoughts about Dunker too. Dunker is obviously not a really bendy guy at right tackle, but he's an unreal run blocker. So it'll be interesting how this room plays out, but then we missed on a lot of classes. So our next group of kids I expect to produce at tackle, and why this is such a low class is that McCaslin and Nolan are my next two. And those are redshirt freshman tackles, where you really don't want to be. You want a third-year player on the offensive line. I love both of them. I think both of them are going to have a great opportunity to be in the NFL one day, given their athletic profiles, and they play just technical ball already. But that's where this group falls is if Dunker gets hurt, you're playing a redshirt freshman or, depending on if you want to
Go George or
go George. And the tackle is Dunker, and then like, what do we got? And that's why this room falls to this position. It's just, you really are strapped for talent here.
I do.
Talent.
We've talked about this in the past, and if we do end up going with Lauk, I do like leaning into trying to create a mauler base of O linemen.
Yeah.
So 3rd and 10 is already going to be kind of a make it up play for this group.
Yes.
We mentioned with receivers, you're still not throwing out top 3 round receivers that can create separation and prevent any type of interception. So you're going to be very conservative in 3rd and long with this receiver group. Because of that, you're not going to put a lot on these tackles. I think we're going to be fairly conservative in 3rd and long. You're not going to want to just drop into a basic open protection with those 5 guys open up for a strip sack. On the flip side of that too, with our reduced set, the Shanahan offense, you really do protect the edge with your tackles. They actually end up operating more as a guard than traditional left and right tackles in Brian Ferentz system, because you have that tight end protection on the outside, but then you also have that receiver. Those X receivers are going to eventually start acting as crack guys on those DNs. So you're not going to need those dudes to be as athletic to the edge. Really what you're wanting them to be now is downhill players. And Dunker and Lauk, if that ends up being the group, that's 2 really strong downhill guys that are going to be that road grading, failing style of offense that can really lean on people. So while I have reservations about, Lauk was a guy we didn't really identify as a tackle in the recruiting process. I think we were pretty open about that. But if you're going to make this shift, I don't mind it, because it's a choice, And if you're going to value run blocking on 1st and 2nd down over third down protection, I think that's a way to attack this offense.
See, if you're going to do that, move Stevens at the left tackle and put George or Lauk at guard.
Well, I mean, but we haven't really seen Lauk move yet. He was 325 in high school or whatever he was. So it's like he was already moving. I mean, he's already big enough at moving that weight. So
that's a good point.
So we'll see.
Yeah. But this is wild, though. Now going into the last pick is corner.
Yeah.
DeGene, Moss, like Jamari last year was all Big Ten.
Yeah.
Hankins.
Ojemudia.
Yeah. Like Josh Jackson, Desmond King. Corner has been a staple of this defense for a decade. And it's even beyond that, and Micah Hyde. And now to be in last, it just has never been said before.
No.
I'm thinking, if you look back at any writer article for under Phil's tenure here as a defensive coordinator, corner would be last. And maybe Adam Shada might have been last. And that's just a weird spot to be in.
Castillo.
Yeah, Castillo. But now we're bringing back trauma. I think the key recruit in this is Barrows. And I want him to see him start. Watching his South Dakota film, it looks like Iowa corner film to a T. You have the size, 6'1". I think he's 200, isn't he? Or
he's actually 185, but he's got the length though.
He's insanely
and he plays
long.
Incredibly hard.
He's super physical. He's playing a lot of zone there. He's not, he's playing our scheme. He has a difficult task because the guys above him and Hall and Lee Hall and Lee have been here for a long time. They've played since 2022 and 2023. So Phil's developed these guys. He's been in the room with them every day for a long time. He builds relationships with them, and he recruited them here. He's been solid the entire processes. He's talked to these guys every day for 5 years. Barrows has been here for 2 weeks. And he's got to go, hey, we have a relationship, and I have to let you down. And I had to play this guy. And the only way that happens is if Barrows is NFL and undeniable. And so that's a great sign. You see Barrows week 1. Let's say the injuries, Hall is banged up a little bit here. Jalen Watson's a little banged up. Let's say everyone heals and you still see Barrows and like those guys are available to play. That's exactly what you want to see because his film looks like he could be an NFL corner. He's just got that. Everything. It's a 4-minute film of him just making incredible plays and playing how we want them to play. So I think that's truly the key. If us to feel great about corner would be a combo of Barrows and maybe Hall would be my ideal corner starting lineup.
Yeah, I think that'd be the ideal for me as well. They'll be interesting with Barrows because it's such a unique system where we've talked about in the Phil Parker breakdown. how these senior corners could start doing the influence game within the scheme because they've seen the route combinations. They know how to play it correctly. I don't know if you'll get that senior type of play out of Barros within this scheme. But because he has so much experience within college football, and as you mentioned, he was mainly a zone corner, he's still probably going to have a pretty high watermark in that area. Where I saw him, what changed my mind was like, this guy has to be the starter, is just how well he played in the flat in his blitz game, and just the physicality show there. That allows Phil to, at least, if you're not defending the pass at an exceptionally high rate, we can just back you up and invite action to the flats. I think what we talked about a lot last season was because of the lack of depth at D tackle really impacted the pass rush. And that changed Phil's approach dramatically between the 20s. You really had to back these corners up because we're not getting home quickly. So if we can speed up that operation on the front end and we can get higher level D tackle play, higher level D end play with more depth utilized and really action pass rushes on first and second down, I think you'll see this back end get picked up a little bit more. And you might allow for them to be just a touch more aggressive in alignment, which then will help a lot of these guys. Lee is just not a guy that plays well backed up. He can't come forward and get through blocks because of his size. If you frame him up with a tight end on deep ends or big receivers, he's not a great job at breaking up contested catches. Hall, on the flip side, really struggled with negotiating that space. Got beat in a couple double moves. Had multiple breakdowns on not understanding where who he's supposed to cover. With those two guys, if you have the ability to trust that the ball is going to be out in 2 to 3 to 4 seconds, and you can press those dudes and just let them be athletes on the edge, I think you're going to see a lot higher level cornerback play. And that's really going to benefit them because they have the athletic ability to hang with guys. It's the thinking aspect that's killing them so far.
Or just like Lee's just a step slow. He's thinking about it the correct way.
He is.
But then he just can't get around a 6'1" corner.
Yeah.
A 6'1" receiver. And I think you said it perfectly. The defensive line is kind of the key solution to these corners because you just can't let them sit back there for 6 seconds. You can't. You can't have a confident, offensive play caller is going like, I got all day. Like, just give me that first and second 15-yard in route. That corner's not going to be latched on, and they have to feel like they're calling a game that's going to be decided in 3 seconds rather than 5.
Yeah.
And it's such a great point to make that defensive line will actually dictate these guys because they both can run. Like, you see Hall and Lee earlier in their careers, they were in dime packages and other situations where they could start. I think you either play them aggressively and kind of match situations where now they're just running with the hip and they don't have to play through guys as far back, or you just maybe blitz more, have some sort of package on third down where you're not expecting these guys to take 5 steps back. So I think that's where this position lives.
It'll be interesting how it goes because Phil also, he just plays the whole field every single play. He's playing everything. Every call he makes is to not allow a touchdown.
Yeah.
And we have to give him credit for that patience, because if you're a really strong red zone team and you have a really good special teams unit where you're going to probably make more field goals than the other team, giving up yards doesn't really matter. And that patience that Kirk allows for in the defensive side of the ball, it's frustrating as an Iowa fan you just want things to be fixed fast. You want 3 and outs. You want the ball back. You want to stop the insecurity of your defense to be on the field. But you really have to sometimes allow teams to drive the ball and continue to put the ball in there. I think Phil sees like a 12-yard catch and tackle. I don't think that he gets freaked out by that.
No,
I think he sees that as like, oh, we could have got a tip ball, we could have had an errant overthrow, we could have had a sack on that.
Yeah,
let's keep on playing that hand over and over again.
You'll never see him react negatively to a 15-yard in route or anything that's hitting where we should be hit.
Yeah,
the plays where you'll see him go nuclear is Matt Hankett's getting beat on a double move. Plays where you're playing out of your technique. I think when Hall got beat on a double move, he just went psychotic.
Yeah. And
it's like we designed this defense and coach this defense every day to never let that happen because that's how we truly lose games. You just made not a bad play. You made we might lose this gameplay. And that's where he kind of values that position more as the last line of defense is your first and second responsibility, and then everything else beyond that. If you become a great player, you can start making those plays.
Yeah,
but
we'll give you the call. I'll eventually give you the call to make the play.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm giving you off coverage in a cover 3 or cover 4 look and they run a curl on you, let them
I'd rather have that happen. So I think it's finally time to move into the season.
Yep. You want to let's just do a prediction up front. So I'm going to go with 9-3, and we'll discuss where we'll think we'll have losses. I'm not going to pick like individual games which one we're going to lose because there's just so many toss-ups. But where my confidence lies with this team is the senior-laden defense that has a ton to prove. You probably have 8 guys that might be playing their last year of football. NFL is not guaranteed for many of these, and they've spent a ton of time in this system. I can't remember a defense that was this senior-laden that didn't have a really successful year. So you build in that with potentially the best special teams unit in the country.
Yeah.
Which, when it comes to how Kirk wants to action a game, his special teams is so important to, close wins. If you're gonna need Stevens this year to make, I'm sure 3 or 4 huge kicks. You're gonna need Dakin to hopefully improve in the punt pin game, and then Weegen in the return, punt return and kick return game. Be very surprised if he doesn't have a touchdown this year in a big moment. So when those 2 pieces are good, and what we talked about with the run game really having a ton of potential with the addition of Gronowski and the physicality of the O-line, and just the, Lester entering year 2, truly having a lot of time with developing what he wants to see from this offense, I think you're just going to have a complete Iowa football team. I think the closest one you probably can look back to is 2018 when it comes to a team that could give and take. You didn't really have the running back play that year to be at the high level, and you kind of fell short, at corner, which is a little scary. But every game that season, you were in the game. There wasn't a game you were outmatched from an offensive or defensive perspective. And a couple of bounces go our way this year, you could slip your way into a 10-2 playoff season.
Yeah, I do think there's a high watermark of playoffs and 10-2. Just because we'll break down the top 2 games being at home, top 3 actually in my eyes. But I'm going to go with 8-4, and I just couldn't get to 9-3. When you break down the schedule, you have 2 teams with for sure more talent than you. There's no doubt that Oregon and Penn State are showing up with top 5, top 8 rosters. You get them both at home, you have opportunities to upset them. That's without a doubt. I only can circle 3 teams where I feel confident that we have more talent than. Without a doubt. Obviously, the 2 non-conference games are going to be pushovers. And then going at Rutgers, we have more talent than Rutgers. Rutgers is not recruiting to the same NFL talent that we have. But then I go from the 4th easiest game we have until the 30 hardest game we have. And that would be what? 8 games? 8 games in toss-up situations. Not true toss-ups. Like, I feel better about Wisconsin.
Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Feel about Minnesota, but those are rivalry games. So, like, we'll break this down, but our rivalry games are some of our easier games, rivalry games. That's usually our hardest games. And then you play this middle of the schedule where you're playing ranked opponents, teams that expect to win 9 games. You're playing legendary coaches. You're playing dark horse Heisman candidates. You're playing, the best new team in the Big Ten. The middle, higher upper chunk of this schedule is insane. You're going to have possibly 7 teams that win 9 games on the schedule. Like, Minnesota can talk themselves into 9 wins. Indiana can. USC can. Michigan State can find a way to find 9 wins on their schedule. And they have 2 talented players. So I do think that playoff in 10-2 is a possibility given the depth of the schedule and how many ranked wins you have. And you have 2 upset opportunities at home. But every time I wanted to get to 9-3, I'm circling like 4 games where we're going to win. And and I'm not even circling at Wisconsin.
Just the level of QBs that you're going to play. We can walk through them just quickly.
Yeah.
Drew Aller, Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza,
Childs,
Aiden Childs, Rocco Becht,
Maeva.
Yeah, Maeva. Lindsey's a talented guy at Minnesota.
Yeah.
Not going to put Billy Edwards in there.
No, yeah, Billy Edwards is not going on the list. But Lindsey's, we'll see.
Yeah, well, I think Lindsey's going to be good.
Yeah, but then there's one more name that we're not thinking of either.
Yeah, we're missing one. Penn State, Oregon.
But yeah, it's a great exercise. Like,
Yeah.
you're playing unreal quarterback play, and you're playing teams that recruit around you. Like, I don't feel great about every room. And I think if we had some more like NFL, like Jack Campbell's, Laporta's, DeGene. If we had DeGene on this team, I'm probably going 10-2, maybe 9-3. Like 9.5 point win total is what I think. But I don't see that like we have this guy, we're for sure better than these 6 teams. And I think that's where when you get to a toss up for possibly 7 games without even playing Penn State and Oregon, you're like, whoa, that is a schedule. And the win total is at 7 right now. It's at 7.5, but it's minus like 160 in some cases, maybe minus 130.
So it's a true 7.
So it's like approaching 7, and I'm picking 8, and I'm like, man, that's where to pick 9 is you're almost seeing a deviation. And I think Gronowski gives you that opportunity to pick 9 and the home games at home. But let's just break into each individual game.
Yep.
That's a good preface to it all. But Penn State, obviously, is your number one
Toughest game.
To break down their retention story, it is why they're expected to be in a national title contender. First off, almost no reason to discuss the Penn State defense. It's going to be a top 3 defense, maybe the best defense in the country every year. You watch it last year against the top teams outside of Oregon in the Big Ten title game. Again, watching against Notre Dame, there's like 3 or 4 flashes. I've never even heard that guy's name before. And now you're bringing back guys like Sutton, Durant, Rojas,
Wheatley.
Their safeties are going to be insane.
I think the best play to just to summarize Penn State is Rojas isn't a guy they highlight a ton as a star player. He had a pick against SMU where he jukes the entire team and houses it.
Yeah, it's like one of the greatest plays.
He's an NFL skill player.
Yeah,
and he's playing middle linebacker for him.
Yeah,
and then Wheatley is the fastest safety I've ever seen in my life at like 6'2". Probably gonna be the first safety off the board.
Yeah,
it's just every single guy.
Sutton is going to be a first round end.
So my rebuttal to that though is how Iowa is going to play this year is you can play phone booth football the entire season, and especially at home when you have a juiced up O-line. Hopefully, you get Penn State in a bit of a fish out of water moment where that's going to be an insane Kinnick crowd. Granted, they have some experience there. It's not going to be to the level of Oregon where Oregon's going to walk in like, where the hell are we?
Yeah, that's where I always would go. Is why Penn State's clearly for me.
But that game's it has an opportunity to at least be tight. But with Colton Ecke and then the addition now of Jim Knowles. My complaint about Penn State in the past was they've just aligned too aggressively. They believe in their guys too much. They allow too many explosive plays. Knowles is like a passive defensive coordinator. He has like a Phil Parker mind to him. And if you can really teach it a passive approach and get these guys, thinking a little bit more on the Penn State side, and then you add in Colton Ecke, who is just like, I love his style because everything's vertical. Yeah. He's trying to create 4 verticality for some pressure on every play. And with Aller and Singleton, Aller has the arm strength to go anywhere on the field he wants, and Singleton is the ultimate mismatch in the running back pass game. You mix in who they're going to have at tight end, a couple of good additions at receiver. Obviously, that Troy guy who lit us up last year. You're going to need to play that 2017 Penn State game where they move the ball at will, but you're you play exceptional in the red zone, and then you're going to need some explosive plays. You're going to need like 3 or 4 explosive plays.
And Penn State knows where they're walking into. I think that's a massive, I think we'll talk about Oregon, but Franklin's been here, 2017, 2021. And I think it won't even one more opportunity than that. But he knows what a powder keg Kinnick will be in that situation. Looking at their offense, I do feel like Singleton is the only guy where I'm like, that's like he's NFL.
He's playmaker in NFL.
Playmaker in NFL. Yeah. Katron Allen is very good. 1,100 yards rushing, has been super solid for a long time. When he touches the ball, I'm not going like, oh no, Katron Allen. It's like this he can get you 15 pretty good. And he runs extremely hard and has a good side-to-side game to him. Warren was a really key piece for him on offense last year. Like, obviously, he was 7th in the Heisman voting as a tight end. He's gone. Their tight end's behind him. It's Penn State's tight end production is absurd. It's like 5 years in a row of having like an insane tight end. They're going to do it again. Number 16 is like a 6'6" deer that can absolutely move, but it's not Warren. Warren was like he was one of the best productive tight ends of all time. And you watch him you watch where Aller's looking all the time last year. It's just Warren. Like it's Singleton in the run game and Katron in the run game, and then it's almost always Warren in big situations. So when he's gone and Aller on the road, I think that there's actually an opportunity here to give their offense some problems. And like we made them drive a long way. Almost all their drives in 2023 were like 12-play drives. We didn't allow explosiveness. And I don't see explosive players. They're not going to be Singleton, but like in their passing game and Aller, I don't see them ripping off 20-yard throws consistently.
Aller not being a mover really helps our defensive philosophy too.
Truly.
And we've seen him get a little squirrely sometimes too. Like he
chokes.
He can choke.
He choked every time, every big game. So if you get this guy to the fourth quarter, we've seen he made one of the worst throws in college football history, that pick against Notre Dame. That was just time scenario was one of the worst plays ever.
Yeah.
So he's got it in him to do something dumb.
Yeah.
The issue also is their offensive line returns 4 starters on a line that had 2,000-yard rushers, and the rushers are back too, and you have Koltanecki devising all this crap. They're going to chew yardage in the run game, and we're going to allow it because that's how we're going to play it. We're not going to heavy the box up. What I would like to see is us to heavy up as much as we will. Drop 3 in the box, rely on these safeties, and make Aller beat you. Don't let this team will execute in the red zone. They're very good on fourth down. They're going to
scheme it up well.
They've schemed up stuff that they know what they're looking at. You want to not give up the big play, but like that's kind of
if you're going to win the game.
If this team's like, if you're going to truly beat this team, not just rely on like 3 plays, like 3 special teams plays or like a turnover, but to give push their buttons more, make Aller throw for 300 yards. Don't let these guys have exactly what they want in the run game the entire game. I think it's time to rely on Phil being more aggressive early on in these big games rather than kind of trying to survive the first half, which it seems like we've done in the past.
Because those guys can get in a rhythm, and you can wear on your own D-line, and it just kind of zaps the crowd too to just have a team possess and move methodically.
You're going to need short fields, and you're going to need to take a lead, have a game that matters in the third quarter. You're not down by 2 scores against this defense.
Yeah.
This defense is not going to allow you to score 14.
You need field position.
You're not going to score 14 points in the second half against this defense on 70-yard drives. So you have to action some sort of aspect towards it. So I just want to see like a different type of approach to this game.
And I think this will be the year that, with Knowles, he's going to be more passive than previous Penn State coordinators. But with a QB you could trust to make good decisions, you need to attack downfield against Penn State. That's going to be my biggest point of emphasis when that game comes this season. Is you have to take chances on offense because the sustained drives are just not going to be there. Mm-hmm. Their D-line is going to
be dominant.
Yeah. You're not going to be able to line up and run inside zone for any type of consistent play. You're going to have negative plays a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to show up and just throw the ball a lot.
Be aggressive.
Yeah. And if you aren't aggressive and you're just hoping for the broken tackle or the blown assignment, it's not coming. Mm-hmm. So this is where the philosophy of Kirk has to flip a little bit, and hopefully Lester can, imprint this himself. But
you got to trust your QB. Like you brought this
and
guy
maybe
in.
Kirk will allow for that because now you got the QB to do it, and you got a guy you can trust back there. So that's gonna be really interesting. We got to start getting rolling these because we're so far deep. But let's move on to Oregon.
Oregon, I think you look at Oregon's personnel, massive turnover on the line of scrimmage, which is like the first thing when you hear that you're like, oh, like that's like a real opportunity for Iowa. Oregon was. You watched them against Michigan State last year, dominant against Michigan State, a unit that played well against us. You lose Gabriel, they lose their leading rusher in James, they lose Tez Johnson, they lose a lot of their defensive line goes and gets 3 of them gets drafted. Big turnover in their secondary as well. Linebacker's going to be good, and then all of a sudden the freaks list comes out, and then some other writers start writing in all Big Ten players, and Oregon's got 3 guys you've never heard of that didn't play last year. You're like, oh no. So it's a top 8 roster, and it's expected. Nike money there. They're shelling out money. They brought in Justin Jacobs. They brought in Bucky Irving. They're stealing kids, the best kids away from the Big Ten West the last few years. We know what this roster is going to look like. It's going to be top 8 and having an opportunity to compete for the Big Ten title without a doubt. The opportunity here is this is kind of like Washington and Indiana in 2021, Washington last year. You have no familiarity with Kinnick. Most of these people probably can't even find Iowa on a map. That's the reality. And they were never recruited to Iowa. Iowa might have sent them a letter. They didn't read it. Iowa's not on their radar. And there's a possibility we have 2 losses at this time, possibly 3. And so you're coming in, maybe an unranked situation. It's a night game. Oh, we've played in tough environments before. There's no way this is going to be some different viewpoint.
Yeah.
Stadium's packed 20 minutes before the game starts.
You're staying at the Marriott in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah.
This is where am I?
Yeah.
We're from Cedar Rapids, so we can talk a little shit about Cedar Rapids.
Yeah. Where am I?
You drive a half hour south, you're not seeing that many guys in the road that early. You know, you're not seeing any big city.
Yeah.
And then you show up into the stadium 20 minutes early, and it's packed to the gills.
Yeah. Everyone's dressed accordingly.
It's going to be striped.
Yep.
And
or black.
as you come on the field, there's going to be a goon squad of 2,000 dudes who bought tickets behind the bench to learn your girlfriend's name.
Yeah, for one sole purpose.
For one sole purpose, and they've thought about it all year.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting tickets there, and I'm ruining that guy's life today.
They're talking about it in the tailgate. You know, we got to get in these guys' heads. You know, there's an entire philosophy behind the Kinnick crowd that sits up close behind the river.
The vibe of Kinnick is so different from any other college team. Like, we come to the Gophers. We were at that night game for the Gophers. It's loud. Yeah, it's more of like a party.
Yeah.
There is an air of violence when you come into Kinnick. It's just the feel of it. Yeah. It's just Iowa. It's a tough place.
It's intense.
It's tough. This is all we got, so it better go well.
Yeah.
And
this is the party of the year right here.
Yeah. This is the party of the year, and there's a gladiator aspect to it. Mm-hmm. When you have that initial kickoff, and you think about that Van Kekerick's hit against Missouri, where some third-string linebacker absolutely nukes your dude.
Yeah.
It feels like they got you in the dungeon and they're here to hurt you. Mm-hmm. And that's the aspect of playing Kinnick at night with the mentality of Iowa football is we might not win this game, but we're taking a couple of you with you.
Yeah. The crowd loves violence too.
It does.
The touchdown plays will get cheers, but the big hits will get equal ones.
Exactly. And that it's such a vibe shift from what you would expect on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. A lot of flash. You know, a lot of trying to make plays. Yeah. You're not trying to, it's just an entirely different style.
You're playing a wrestling culture.
Yes.
It's not Washington, Oregon, tossing the ball around the field. We got Penix and Bo playing a high-level game, you know, sweet jerseys. It's like you're coming to Iowa, you're playing wrestlers. You're playing everyone around here values.
This is the Fremen.
Toughness. Yes. Yeah. The Fremen, truly.
Yeah. This is a tough place.
Yeah.
And the reason Iowa has success as a program is because of small town violence.
Yeah.
There is a toughness to Iowa that is difficult to replicate unless you have that pressure of football is my way out.
Yeah.
I can't go spend $100K on a
and this
student loan.
This is who I've been admiring since I've been 5 years old. I'm not looking at professional athletes. I'm not looking at, you know, stardom and other aspects, movie stars. I'm looking at Iowa football players as the pinnacle of this culture.
That's my hero.
Yeah. Josie Jewell's my hero. Jack Campbell. That's who these guys grew up watching. We grew up watching Bob Sanders. Bob Sanders was the coolest guy I've ever He was who I wanted to be. I want to be Bob Sanders more than anybody because he killed people. And that it's ingrained into the Iowa culture. Kids want to be Hawks. They want to play this style.
When you leave Iowa, you forget about it.
Yeah.
Like you forget how tough Iowa is. And it's one of those things that Oregon's going to walk into it, and that's what gives us potential now. They have they're going to have a roster probably 10 times as worth 10 times as much money.
Yeah.
But the toughness of football, you cannot get around the physicality
and the care. The fan base cares a bunch. So I think that's where this game almost doesn't come down to breaking down the retention story. Because guess what? They're going to be incredible. And there's going to be matchups that we don't have. But you have to jump them. You have to bring them into this dungeon of the Kinnick environment and spook them. Because Franklin knows who he's walking into. I think that's a much harder opportunity because he's showing the highlights. I had Saquon Barkley, and we won on the last play of the game. This is going to be an insane environment. Has Lanning and anyone on that staff even been to Kinnick?
Yeah.
I think that's where you can read stuff, but until you experience it, that's where this upset opportunity comes. And it has to be a night game. I think the Big Ten, to really showcase the depth of the Big Ten, needs to put this as a night game because there's a lot of talk of middle of the Big Ten's not as good. Iowa night game against a perennial team, we can showcase that the sixth best team, possibly the fourth best team in this conference, has real, opportunities to beat these top teams. And I think that's where the Big Ten has the opportunity to showcase that. So not much of a breakdown. It's more of a just emotional, which I think every Iowa fan, every single kid that walks in that stadium, like Oregon, like West Coast, let's show them what we're about. Pretty boys. And that's what this game is. It's not going to, that's where the edge will come is let's just show what, Iowa football is all about.
Yeah, we got them.
Yeah.
Doors are locked in Drake Kulik.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's time to move on to the next game. And this is where the draft becomes extremely difficult. I don't think there's a clear answer. And this is where games can drop 2 or 3 based on our arguments. But I think I'm up now, right? I went Penn State, Oregon. And it doesn't really matter. We're going to draft those guaranteed. But I'm going to go with This is surprised me, but at USC. And we just talked crap about the West Coast being soft and stuff, but now we're in their environment. And Kirk has struggled out West his entire career. There's something about it that it just, maybe that we lose that rivalry tension when we go on the road in that place. There isn't this like, hate for Minnesota, Wisconsin, Nebraska, even though we're playing opponents that are probably like in talent. And we just can't get to that energy level. And then you think of how USC plays. And it's Lincoln Riley with 2 really good receivers. And they're going to be chucking the ball probably about 40 times. And you think about what we just ranked our position groups and what we talked about. We're concerned about pass rush. We like our run stopping ability to have our forefront. Pass rush needs to get there. And our cornerback play. So I just see this as we're going to have to actually score 25 points plus in this game to win. You're not going to hold USC most likely less
than 24.
24. Yeah. And then you look at they didn't have a great year last year, but you look at how they produced against the top teams, and they'll view Iowa as a team that like is a quality one.
Yeah, they'll circle.
Possibly we're only a 1-loss team at this point, or a 2-loss team. So they played LSU last year in a big spot, won the game. We know LSU is always good. It's always a top 6 roster in terms of talent. A&M, they beat in the bowl game. They played Notre Dame tough. And then they play Penn State extremely tough, too. They went by 2 scores in the second half.
Yeah, if it wasn't for some miraculous plays by Warren.
So they're a 54% blue chip ratio. That means 54% of the players are 4 stars. So when you step on the field, this is the 4th best team in the Big Ten, behind 4th or 5th, at where Michigan's sitting. But they have talent. They have weaknesses. It is still this defense that they don't know what they're doing. They bring in a good T tackle from the guy that's transferred a billion times. But it just feels like a really odd spot, especially late in the year too. If this game was like week 4 or 5, I'd feel more confident. But given that it's like, the last month of the year, it's just an odd spot.
Yeah, I'll move on to Indiana as number 4. I watched a clip of just 2024 season highlights for them, and I just came away terrified. They just seem very complete, and they look almost like a professional team. Mm-hmm. Like where they're actioning their big plays on those deep ends with their, Cooper and Surratt. And then you bring in Fernando Mendoza, and you look at his, skill set. He has a great laser ball to 20 and 20-25. Throws a really good back shoulder. It's essentially the exact skill set that Rourke killed everyone with last year. Look who they bring back on defense with Kamara, Fisher, and Pons. A scheme that was really strong. Obviously,
jumped on a lot of teams.
They benefited from that confidence that teams can build through win after win after win. There's just no doubt in you. So then when the time comes to make big plays, you just continue to roll on them.
They didn't flinch in so many games.
And you saw their offense, really get stymied against Notre Dame, but Notre Dame, ended up being the national title game and has arguably the best secondary in the country. And we're just not going to throw at that group. The big benefit of this is that it's at home. Mm-hmm. You're going to have what we just talked about with Oregon being a little bit of a fish out of water. Indiana, I don't think that 2021 was the last time they were there. They're not going to be prepared for that moment. It's going to be likely a ranked matchup. I think Indiana's going to come in, ranked fairly high.
Probably undefeated. I think they have the Illini at home.
So that's going to be another gigantic powder keg moment for Kinnick. That is a huge advantage for what our defense is going to need to do, because they're going to be behind the 8 ball a touch when it comes to trying to attack this offense. From our defense perspective, they have playmakers. Pons obviously had a lot of plays last year. I don't think it's nearly to the level of what we're going to see from a Penn State or Oregon. And when you're at home, there's more comfortability with it. I think this is a game where you're going to need Grano to kind of outduel QB. Mm-hmm. And this middle ground of the season, of the regular season, is really where it's going to come down to a lot of QB duels. We did that list of QBs at the top, and like Fernando Mendoza against Grano's, like who has the better day is going to likely determine who wins that game. So I think both teams are relatively even from a skill perspective.
Yeah, I think I would call out the retention story on 2 things that could change this Indiana program from what it is last year's. They bring in Hemby at running back, and they lose 2 studs. And you watch them last year, their running back, their offensive line played well. It always would generate good.
It was really good.
It was good. But the running backs played exceptionally well, broke tackles at the linebacker level, and would rush for 10 yards consistently. Hemby's a good back. I don't know if he's Ellingson. I don't know if he's the guy they had last year. And everyone kind of glossed over, like, oh, yeah, they got Hemby, so they'll be fine at running back. It's like Hemby's been average for 3 years at Maryland. Like we called him out in our preview saying this guy can play, but I don't think it's going to be the level they had last year. Also, they lose a D tackle to the 49ers, and he's 320. And the retention story there for the guys who brought in are not what he was, a drafted D tackle. So Indiana was great last year was running the ball at a great clip, stopping the run at a great clip, and playing extremely fundamental football everywhere else. Like the high wire acts they would play on the secondary and passing game were great, but what they really did was play a really fundamental line of scrimmage game. I think their run game might take a slight dip given that, and I think their run stopping might take a slight dip. So right when that happens, you drop 10% on each side, you become a team that has more variance rather than just dominating the line of scrimmage in every game you played, especially against the opponents they played last year. Like they didn't have to play up, like other than Ohio State and then obviously Notre Dame in the playoff. They're playing like opponents with like a line of scrimmage advantage with a lot of momentum. It's like Minnesota in 2019 proved out like that can snowball quickly where you're playing perfect first and second quarter football with that type of momentum. But what happens when there's some that variance? You don't get that fumble on 4th and 1 against Nebraska when Nebraska about tied up 14-all. You don't get that weird pick 6 against Washington in the first quarter that split the game wide open. Now you're just playing back and forth football, and like you're not in that like we're rolling at all times. I think Indiana has likelihood of a downturn this year. Not much, because I think their program is set up perfectly. A great coach doing a great job bringing in talent, but I view them as more of an 8-win team this season rather than what they were last year.
Yeah. So now discuss Iowa State, which is, although it's the 5th ranked game.
Yeah, and it's weird.
It's arguably the most
important
game of the season.
This is number 1. Upsets would be number 1, but
you had to get past this one first.
Yes,
and it's going to be a great game.
Yeah.
It's going to be what Matt Campbell and Kirk Ferentz have been for the last 5 years. It's going to come down to likely a field goal or a late drive.
Mm-hmm.
The pressure in these rivalry games, it flips a lot of the time to the home team. We've seen it happen within Kinnick multiple times at Iowa State, where you can kind of feel that play flip. The Noel play last year
flipped it.
It flipped it, where you just all of a sudden now we're playing nervous, they're playing loose, and
the
same
play.
thing happened. Yeah. Castro getting the pick 6 against.
I think it even happened before that. I think the Patterson long run, where all of a sudden it was like, oh, like we have an opportunity to jump on them, or at least take a lead early.
And then, the big difference between their team last year is obviously you lose Noel and Higgins. Higgins, I watched back like an hour-long clip of Iowa State highlights. The guy was just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
They brought in a guy from Eastern Carolina in Sowell. He's going to be their attempt at Higgins this year. He doesn't have the high-end speed that Higgins has, but where he's going to be really difficult for a team like Iowa to manage is if we end up playing a smaller corner in a Lee or Watson. When it comes to those long drives that lead to the red zone, I am a little bit insecure about their ability to hit jump balls to him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he's not. I don't think he's going to be a drafted receiver. I think you might get him in the 6th or 7th round, but he's not the level of athletic ability that they saw last year from Higgins and Noel.
Mm-hmm.
The guy they brought in from UCF, I didn't even bother to learn his name because I watched a little bit of him. I was like, okay, he's a gadget guy. You can use him in reverse.
Yeah,
he'll be a good underneath route runner, but certainly not to the level of Noel. Where they're going to actually, action this team is going to be through their tight ends and running backs.
Yep.
And that screams, promising for an Iowa team that usually does a pretty good job against stopping the run against Iowa State. Where Becht is really exceptional, and I'll kick it back to you after this, is timing routes up the seam and over the middle. Mm-hmm. And what Iowa does a great job of is stopping over the middle, timing routes, and up the seam. And outside of the deep ball to Noel and the final out and up to Noel against Castro, he actually had a very poor game last year.
Mm-hmm.
He struggled to throw the ball well to the edge. He does not have a strong arm to the sideline, which is where Iowa wants you to attack. If it wasn't for TJ Hall dropping a pick in the end zone, that game ends on a TJ Hall pick-up ball that he left inside that Higgins stole from Hall.
Mm-hmm.
I think with his skill set, Iowa is going to feel fairly comfortable running their base stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really going to come down to the same thing it always comes down with Iowa State is how well do we stop their run against light boxes?
Mm-hmm.
And they might have their best offering for that in quite some time, though.
Yeah, I think that's how I evaluate it as well. Is receivers take a step back. That's without a doubt. The more you watch Becht late in the year, especially last 6 games when they really started to roll, he's approaching NFL capabilities. And where that comes down to is your 2-minute drill and 3rd and long. He felt very comfortable in a lot of situations. where most teams would crumble. He kind of then, this is my time to step up. Similar to how we talked about Gronowski letting the game come to him, and now this is my time to win it. Becht had that throughout the entire year last year. Even them adding his legs as a dimension in the red zone and short yardage is very important for this game as well, because we don't really account for that player in most situations. So I think that could come into extending drives for them as running back in power situations, 1 or 2 times. I am concerned that their offensive line expectations are generally good. It's a room that wasn't dominant last year, but returns a lot of players. But their running back room and Hansen and Sama are guys that are going to have the right idea how to play this Iowa defense, which is get 6 yards, get 4 yards, fall forward. Don't make a move, get vertical, and extend drive. So it seems like they're going to have an opportunity with Becht on 3rd and medium and running backs and tight ends, kind of trying to control the box to have a lot of long drives. And I just view this game as like a 21-20 game, 24-20, because there's no way that
they're going to score.
They're going to move the ball.
Yeah.
Like Becht is
he's too good.
He's played too many games. His third time playing Iowa. They have too many things of what they want. They have running backs that are going to make plays, as well as tight ends that are going to make plays. And then on defense, Campbell says this is his best linebacker room he might have ever had. They got decimated there last year, built a bunch of depth. Now the starters are back. Bacon being the middle linebacker. I think they go 6'4" across the board, all 3 linebackers. Usually that's where Iowa has their abilities. They're just more physical up front. It sounds like they're going to be pretty physical at linebacker. Safety and their secondary, big turnover. Cooper's their big returning starter. Obviously a great player. And then another safety I think was up for an award as well preseason. D-line, no one's jumping out other than Orange. Obviously, he was at 60% snaps last year. So you want to see, he can get to a higher snap count to actually really impact games for the entire game.
He's just a big fella, though.
He's just a big boy. I don't know if you ever can play him without him gassing out. I don't know. This is why I went 8-4 this game. And games like we're about to discuss with Indiana, Iowa State, and whatever we'll get into prediction a week of, but I do view us as probably, in my eyes, a 1.5 point favorite with Grano in there. But man, it's going to be a great game with a QB that can win games late. Like
it's going to come. I think the thing to point out here is hopefully the special teams advantage. Connor Frederick obviously hit the kick of his life, but he was very shaky for the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. And Stevens should be incredibly solid. So if it comes down to a field goal game, that might end up being the difference. The difficult part with Iowa State's defense is this stop-start aggression. When they can drop 8 on you, your play action is essentially moot, because they can, since they're playing from such depth, they can now match down. And then not only that, they have a guy for your QB who can then rush and they can create pressure there. So our boot game is going to be odd. It just never really hits against this light front. Then also your RPO game, though, is really going to be the difference. We saw Lester use a ton of it in the first half. I think Kirk might have got spooked by a near pick on it, and we didn't go to it late. We started only using the flat routes. Mm-hmm. But I talked about early how I was going to be completely comfortable in shotgun because of Grano's running ability. You create all the pressures you need to create, and that then opens up your ability to run RPO. And I think this is the perfect game for RPO deep shots, where you have, even if they catch you in a rush 3 drop 8, what that allows you to do is essentially ensure you have endless time. With a 3-man pressure against a 5-man protection, you can go anywhere you want on the field. Where you can really take advantage of that is if you can mix in one of those long meshes. And we talk about, the new guy from Wake Forest, the OC, who had this odd mesh game. I think this is the moment where you break that out, where you break in long developing RPO meshes and you run sluggos and other deep combo routes to take advantage of really long time to throw the ball. And where you're going to really need to be effective is in passes between 50 and 30 yards. It's not underneath. You can't, if you're going to drop 8, they can come down fast to it. They have bodies for it. There are numbers advantages everywhere for the defense. They have a gigantic advantage in the short passing game. Where you need to hurt them is through explosive plays. Yeah. That's where we saw Arizona State score a ton of points, is through, attacking the field down to, 20, 25-yard throws. Yeah. And hopefully that's where, we could do it.
I think it comes down to two ways I would attack it. Given the way that when you watch Iowa State, it's so similar to Phil Parker in terms of like the way they design this defense. They build all their guys huge. Their corners are just stocky dudes. Their safeties are stocky guys.
Frailer last year was a free safety.
It's the same thing. You build big guys up, you play them off, and then you have to make them play aggressive. But they have to because you only have a 3-front defensive line with 3 linebackers in most cases, sometimes 2 depending on formation. So that Frailer safety has to play super aggressive in the run game. It's actually he's the number one target of your deep passing game needs to be him because he has to go fill everything so it doesn't go for 7. So I think that's actually the player that you should be attacking in deep ball situations is that middle safety. So that's like the number one thing I want to see Lester have prepared for is 10 plays to attack the guy in some creative way. Get something deep on him and throw underneath him. Throw something underneath, show something underneath and throw deep on him because his responsibilities is insane. He has to play 3 yards out the ball for run plays for it to work. He's the extra body. But that means his responsibility deep is very difficult as well. And he's not a mover. Those guys have not been the fastest guys. So if you do get them on a negative step, you can beat them deep. And I'd say the other thing I want to attack them with is off tackle because they're once again a beefy team. They're just that they want to play downhill into the gaps, fill gaps. They're not sprinters. They're not runners. So we saw with Caleb last year when you get them on the edge and you get these guys horizontally moving, they don't really have the sideline to sideline movement. So anything pitch or long outside zones that are kind of extending the edge in some way, or boot games where you can get on the edge. Obviously, it's not as beneficial to how they play it, but Grano can then scramble against these lesser athletes. Don't let them play downhill physical football. Get them moving side to side and north and south vertically, rather than like just coming downhill into straight power concepts that they can fill well.
Yeah, and really the key piece of this is how do you stop edge aggression from them? Mm-hmm. So where they've had really strong success in the second half, stopping our pin and pull actions, the edge is just guys flying off the edge at the snap. Mm-hmm. And that's I honestly that's one thing I'm like I don't know how you stop that action if your boot game's not working too. So It's just a very odd negotiation with under center football against this 3-front because you want to run in the interior, but as you mentioned, they're such big bodies that they can fill fast and they all play so physical. The interior run game is not usually that effective.
Yeah.
I think what you kind of want to move to is playing the shotgun game with them.
Yeah.
And then
you have a mover. Yeah.
And then you have, I think you made a great point about Gronowski against a 3-man rush is if you're going to allow him to survive the pocket for that long, can he start picking up 4 and 5 yard gains and getting down and protecting himself? And that's really going to be probably the most important piece of red zone attack against this guy is Grano just saying, hey, I know I got a pass play on, but I'm scrambling the minute I get a lane here.
Yeah. And I think when the coaching staff breaks out the schedule and they're setting their meetings in the spring and the winter of trying to determine how this next season is going to go, I think they circle this game 10 times. You cannot lose this game and have a successful year this year.
Oh, for Kirk.
To lose back-to-back years we haven't lost to back-to-back years against Iowa State since 2011 and 2012. So it's been over 13 years since that's happened. The care from the staff is obviously going to be there. It's always there, but like after a loss is even higher. You extend.
Usually have their best performances the year after a loss.
And then you brought this up earlier when you're talking about our front seven. There's a lot of Iowa kids that are very late in their careers and are Iowa fans their entire lives. So you have Herkett, Llewellyn, Harrell, Shire, Graves. This is probably their biggest game of the season for those 5 kids. And it's what we need to play the best. We need to stop their run, stop the running backs. You have veteran front 7 players from the state of Iowa in the Cy-Hawk game, and we all expect them to play well. So that's where, like, when I look at game day, I'm looking at those 5 to be, I can't lose. We cannot lose this game. And that's where will Iowa State have its equal amount of bodies? Most likely. There's going to be plenty of Iowa kids on that side that have the same hate in their heart for the Hawks. But I just feel confident that bunch to be like, it's kind of on our shoulders.
It's going to come down to them too. What we've talked about a ton is just the way they're going to line in that game. It's going to be a 6-on-7 in the box. Mm-hmm. And 5 of those dudes are playing Iowa State as Hawkeyes. Like, you're going to need to bring the pain. Yeah. And those games can flip so fast against Iowa State because if you're not getting the insecurity on the edge that we had the last 2 years against them with Higgins Noel, if you can stop that light box run, you could really stymie this offense. And because Becht isn't the biggest athlete on the planet. He's not a Childs where if you get him in a one-on-one on the edge,
He's winning.
He's winning. And if you get a chance to tee off on him, like he might be done for the game.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a great game. I can't discount. I want to add to the back take. He's an incredible player. He's like you said, he's going to have a chance at the NFL.
Yeah.
But because of his limitations from an athletic perspective and size perspective and arm strength, there's a chance that he has a rough day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's just because it's not going to play to the natural ways you would attack Iowa.
Yeah.
Using your legs and running or throwing to the sideline,
yeah.
which is just the nature of the defense we play.
Yeah.
I think it's time to move on to the next game then at Nebraska, which is once again crazy that this is drafted this low. And it kind of highlights the depth of the schedule is that at Nebraska this year, Nebraska did have one loss at that time. In some arguments, 2 losses was probably the most consistent thing. They might be ranked in the top 15 that late in the season. And their offense, looking at their personnel, it's going to be strong. You have Holgerson at OC. He definitely was an uptick when he came in. Running back, they bring back one of the Johnson bros. He was extremely productive when Holgerson was entered in the system. They gave him the ball a lot more. Barney was probably their best receiver last year from how we viewed it. He might not have had the most yards or receptions, but definitely the guy that's going to give us a lot of issues over the middle of the field. It's Nebraska receivers. They obviously bring in a transfer from Kentucky that can really fly. It's going to be a group of 4 stars that are all kind of knocking on the door to the NFL. They're excited about their tight end position as well. So in the end, you stick Raiola on top of that with an offensive line that returns a decent amount of starters, and it's always a strong unit. Their offense is going to be in a good position to be a top 40 offense, top 30 offense, given that type of personnel. And you have a year 2 quarterback that really can throw any ball on the field. Where my concern is for Nebraska is their defense. They lose their defensive coordinator to Florida State, which is kind of a lateral move. But the way I would kind of explain that is they just lost their 2 D tackles that were stalwarts of this defense. And their retention story of who the D tackle stories are going to be this year, it just doesn't fit the same mold of what just left. And that D coordinator style play, allowing his D tackles do a lot of work for him, kind of play like Iowa State where they're kind of late to the ball. You wonder if he kind of saw the writing on the wall with his defensive personnel this year. I think it's still going to be a Nebraska defense where there's 3 or 4 bodies that are NFL and have athleticism in the front 7 and good secondary play. But that's just a weird move. Why is a D coordinator leaving this? Like, this is year 3 under Rule. This is the opportunity to have a dark horse playoff run, and you leave to a lateral program in Florida State. It makes me then look at that D tackle room leaving, going like maybe he knew that this wasn't going to be the same unit he had in previous years.
He had to strike while the iron was hot.
Exactly. And maybe he's like, maybe we missed our window on defense a little bit. So I think as much as their offensive expectations are extremely high in Nebraska, and they should be, and I think they will fulfill, a top 30 offense efficiency-wise, defense, I expect to take a step down this year. Unfortunately, we get them in the last game of the year. They're going to have 12 games of this defensive coordinator. But losing those 2 D tackles in Robinson and the Polar Bear, like that can't go unnoticed. You don't replace those 2 type of bodies, and it sounds like they haven't.
Yeah, and then with my biggest fear with them is watching back the Nebraska game last year. Granted, they didn't have a high point total. I had some big drops at moments. Defense really showed up in the run game, had a hell of a day in the run game. But Raiola outside the numbers at 10 to 15 to 20 yards is money. Mm-hmm. And that's where I was trying to get you to attack. When I see QBs who can, layer in balls like he can. He's got a touch pass, a dart pass. Obviously has the deep ball in his game too. We're going to have to play backed up with some pressure that with what they have a receiver. I think they're going to have a very, very strong offensive performance that day, unless we have, unless we're really stymieing their run game, which has potential. But I'm really concerned about Raiola in year 2.
Then moving on to, I think let's just try to fire off these last few. We're obviously not going to cover the 2 non-con games at the end, but I think you have to go Michigan State next.
Yeah, 100%.
I want to lean Minnesota because of just Parrish. I think he's such a scary piece to play against. But Michigan State, I really am worried about their coaching staff. I think this is one of the coaching staffs I circle where I'm like, this is actually a very difficult game because of those 2. Jonathan Smith won back-to-back 10-win seasons at Oregon State. Like, Oregon State. Have you ever heard of a good program? I mean, a good season out of Oregon State, other than when the Twins were there in like 2008. And he's playing the right way, play action, under center football, building a tough team. And then you add the DC Rossi, who's now in a second year. They're more time to develop. They got jumped out of the gate by Oregon and Ohio State and lost by 30 in both games. Obviously, they beat us pretty comfortably. And
They beat our ass.
They beat our ass. And once again, this is the seventh game we were drafting, and it's a team that beat us comfortably last year. That's why it's just hard to envision the 10-win season this year because of your middle of the road teams you're playing. And Childs and Nick Marsh being the highlights of this program are both very talented guys.
That combo is why I have so much insecurity around this game. It's because Childs, with our guys, are not great open field players. And with QBs, with that added number, we talk about the numbers game a lot with running QBs, but with that added number, we're not accounting for him. And then if he gets to the edge, there was just multiple times where if he's in a one-on-one with a two-way go, you're not even touching him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add in Nick Marsh, who can create immense pressure over the top, is great after the
He's
catch.
an NFL receiver.
He's a bar none top 3 round draft pick at receiver. Just that combo with Velling and who they're going to roll out with it. They had a fairly talented O-line last year too. Played really well against us. It's just difficult to see a world where they don't have a strong offense today against us. And again, you're rolling into another QB duel. Like, how well is Gronowski playing at this point in the season? Is he healthy? If we're going to continue running these. If we're going to run him 6 times against Oregon, 6 times against Penn State, where is he at physically at that point?
Yeah.
And that's really going to be a story that breaks out as the season goes along is where's Grano's health at?
Yeah.
Do we continue to run him? Is the running game going to have to be kind of put on the shelf because he's taken, 6 or 7 nuke job hits?
Yeah. And I think the 2 points of confidence I would have about this situation, like this game, is we're not playing at a night game like we did last year at their place. They had a certain juice to them in that game that their line of scrimmage just really kind of jumped us. We had Castro sit out the game healthy. That might have gave weird vibes. We were playing Nestor late in the game. And then we get him at home, and I think that might be even senior day. Those are positive vibes to this game. And there's a possibility that they didn't fill out the roster. There wasn't a great story of every room's loaded. We have great retention. It was kind of a mixed bag of this running back's room is pretty good. O-line's pretty good. D-line's whatever, need more sacks. Linebacker, safety, same kind of story where there's just not this retention, this is the year they're coming. We expect to win 10 games. That's where I could see, maybe they're a 4-loss team at this point and losing a little bit of will, and you get them at senior day at home. That's kind of why this game dropped for me more than Nebraska and Iowa State. They're getting up for that game no matter what. And, both are on the road.
And then, Wisconsin, I just talk a little bit of shit about Wisconsin. I think their program's just in the dirt. I think.
I would draft Minnesota first.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Well, we can get to Minnesota afterwards, but I want to just do a quick bit on Wisconsin.
Yeah.
How they played defensively against us last year was so pathetic.
Yeah.
We ran for 300 yards. They didn't really make any adjustments. They have a complete lack of physicality in the secondary, which kills them against, if you're going to run off coverage and let us get clean to you.
We were planting their D-line too. Planting them 8 yards downfield.
They brought in Billy Edwards. He's not a runner. He's got a good arm. He's a talented enough QB to hurt you in some scenarios. But you lose Pauling, so that was your one run threat. They're trying to hype up this new running back. He's probably gonna have some talent to him, but they've lost a little bit of edge from their O-line that they've previously kicked out because now it's a fickle run team.
There's some names in the O-line you'll recognize, and you're like, oh, those guys can play, and that's where their strength still is, which is hilarious. It's funny how they went from we're gonna bring in QBs and receivers with this scheme. And that's what Fickell's entire goal was, to modernize this offense. And you went from, you got worse at QB every year, and then you got worse at receiver every year since he's been here. So, and now the O-line and the running back are now once against the strengths. And you're like, oh, what do you think?
Well, looking back on the pundits around college football, picking Fickell as, a top 3 coach in the Big Ten when he signed on.
Huge favorites to win the West the first year.
Huge favorites to win the West. And we were sitting there, that it was our first year of the podcast. We're like, this is not going to work.
No.
You can't recruit that level of players to that scheme. And then they just had no patience with it either. They had talent to action. You had fucking Braylon Allen, who you ran 12 times against Iowa.
Yeah.
And while you're still trying to chuck the ball from the 20 with Mordecai.
Fickell has a real good shot getting fired this year. Yeah. I think there's no doubt in my mind. And we get them at a good spot, too. Their program is spiraling, and they're going to get murdered by Alabama early on. They're not going to really have an opportunity for a signature win outside of that. And Iowa could deal a death blow to this entire BS idea how to run a Midwest program. And I think that's where, once again, at Wisconsin is probably the 8th easiest game on the schedule at Wisconsin, usually the hardest or second hardest. It's a weird thing to break down.
It's a hell of an opportunity, though. I would much rather have a season like this where you can 100%. Survive multiple losses. You're going to have maybe 6 ranked teams that you play in the season.
Yeah.
it's going to be, even if you don't, start incredibly strong, maybe you drop a game to Indiana, you're still going to have a season that's in front of you where you can potentially like back your way into a playoff.
Well, guaranteed. If let's say you lose the top 2 games and you go 9-3 still, that means you went 6-1 against like opponents, 6-1, and that's including USC who out recruits you. So you went 6-1 against like opponents, including you won the freebies. That is an incredible
season.
Wade, the point says we're actually the pinnacle of the second tier of college football in the Big Ten. Is that we went 6-1 against programs, myriad were on the road. So I think it's even a 9-3 season. You could really point to a lot of
might
for
be
sure
one of Iowa's best seasons ever.
One of great Iowa seasons, and then there's definitely an opportunity with Grano at QB to have one of a better season because you just have a great quarterback. But I think that's where I live is like I'd rather be in week 10 playing week 11 playing Michigan State to possibly win 9 games than strapping up Illinois and barely beating them at home, a 4-win Illinois team to win the West. And you're like, what was that?
Yeah.
Like we beat them, we won the West, but that didn't feel like much. Like that just felt like we kind of survived. So it's just a great opportunity for Iowa football to reestablish itself. So I think the last game we got to break down is what? Gophers. Is there another one?
No, we can wrap it up there. We've gone on long enough.
Well, I'm trying to think if there's any actually mid-tier game that we forgot about.
Rutgers.
I don't want to do a Rutgers breakdown. Yeah. Rutgers, we'll do a quick one. Is Calic Manis is back. The receiving group is actually talented. They have like 3 bodies that are going to be good. Strong is actually expected to be an NFL player. But I looked at their O-line. I think they had 3 guys below 6'3" on the O-line. And like it's Rutgers. They don't recruit. They find the fun bodies. They find the good stories. They strap enough of those together to pull some upsets against Minnesota. But they're looking at down the barrel of a 6-win season. And we should, even though it's a tough spot, Friday night road game, we're going to show up and we're going to be more talented. So that's about all the breakdown we should do. But Minnesota's, their retention story is a little different. It's Parrish, I think, is the highlight coming back. And truly, when you watch this film, this looks like a kind of a DeGene type player. Like, without a doubt. They're going to play him both ways.
I think that's kind of a mistake, in my opinion.
I don't think it's DeGene, but it's damn close.
No, I'm saying it's a mistake to play him both ways.
I agree with that. The guy's going to be an NFL safety. Play him at safety. Like, I think it's why PJ's doing that is that he's kind of realized where his cap on his program is in the new Big Ten. There's a reality where 8 wins is a very good season for Minnesota going forward. If he has an opportunity to create a storyline, Dion and Colorado were not even that good last year, but were talk of the town because they had this 2-way player. He'd rather create a storyline that would then...
There's other reasons Dion's talk of the town, but...
I know, but like they also had Travis Hunter that was playing both ways. And so I think
Heisman potential.
I think he views it as more of an opportunity to get like national coverage on Minnesota over one player rather than like we should be for sure doing this. I bet there is some probably...
There's also probably a way to keep him home too. I mean, I'm sure they had the NIL... every NIL agent probably called Parrish this year and was offering him millions of dollars. So.
Oh, yeah. He got a call from a lot of guys, yeah.
But Lindsey is a real talented QB. He's honestly like... Watching him, he looks exactly like a Nate Stanley clone. Yeah. Gigantic arm, has a better deep ball, puts great loft on the deep ball. It's going to be a little bit of a different equation for them. They've traditionally played guys who are very good underneath throwers and weren't really able to utilize some of the talented receivers they had. Losing Jackson's going to hurt them a ton. Jackson was incredible the last couple of years, probably the best receiver.
They lost a lot of names. Like if you go through Strigo, Joyner, Lindenberg, Wally, that's your 4 best defenders going in from last year. You lose your retention story that you had in the O-line forever. It's finally kind of like a we'll figure it out group. And then you lose Jackson, obviously, at receiver with their second receiver 2 left as well. The kid from that transferred from
Charlotte.
Yeah. I don't know if he has. I think it's Charlotte. Spencer,
yeah.
So it's like you have these 2 top talented players, obviously, at running back and Parrish. But their retention story throughout the rest of the team could provide like a 7-5, 6-6 season very quickly.
And getting them at home with a redshirt freshman QB, that's going to be a little spooky for them.
Yeah, definitely.
And that, again, they lost their D coordinator for like the 4th year in a row or 3rd year in a row.
Yeah, he's a PJ lifer, and he's got a good safety. I think when PJ's defensive teams have good safety play,
Tyler Newman
and Tyler Newman, Winfield, it makes everything flow a lot easier because he can just fix so much about your run game, and obviously an athlete in the pass game. But even though it's a new D coordinator, he's been there since Western Michigan, so PJ's been talking to him about how he wants a defensive play for almost a decade.
But their passivity, it kind of falls into how Wisconsin and Maryland played us last year and Minnesota. Just their lack of aggression really hurts them against Iowa because then the body blows start to stack up. Mm-hmm. And we're really leaning into the ball control style of offense. And I think, again, with Grano in that run game, they're going to have a really difficult time wise stopping our offense if they're not going to start aligning more aggressively. That might be a shift from this new D coordinator. Their last guy, I don't know what the hell was going on in the game they played against us. We talked about that play where we're on the 1 yard line and they didn't even eagle down. They're in their base set on the 1. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, I think that's what you make great point is that any team that runs too high safeties this year is going to be under a lot of pressure because of Grano. That extra man in the box, every single snap is going to really help that run game on the front side with him, with the boot and possible QB read. You better be in 8-man fronts. I think that's where you kind of have to sit. And even going back to Iowa State, I mean, you're talking about a 6-man front in most cases with
those guys, but they do such a good job of holding up. And then I would be terrified of running QB power against their safeties and linebackers.
They're going to try to kill them
because they're going to come in just missile seeking, trying to end them.
Yeah.
So I would caution Grano running in power or design.
Unless it was like short yardage
where you can tighten up the edges and maybe you can get him to push behind someone.
Yeah.
But hole for a hole against 8 of these teams this year, you're not going to want to send Grano into a hole for a hole because here's your best player. Keep this guy alive.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that's it.
I'm so excited. This is the best time of the year. Obviously, worst time of the year for the kids in camp. That first week of camp, it just feels like the longest days of your life. And then at the end of it, you got to go fight the other team from Iowa State. So it's going to be an awesome season. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a season no matter how it rolls. You're always going to have big time games coming up each week. You get to, I think, Indiana to Nebraska, that stretch. There's not a bad game there. Your Rutgers game is gone. Your non-con's gone. You go from Indiana to Nebraska, and every single week you need to play a B-plus game to win, without a doubt. Awesome. Well, thanks for getting through all this with us. We'll probably find a way to cut it up in some way to make it maybe more easier to digest. Maybe just put a timestamp of like this is when the season preview actually starts. But next time you'll see us will be week 1. It'll be a preview for Albany, which will be focused more on probably the depth chart and what we want to see out of certain players. But
seeing the young guys will be the big storyline there.
Also, we kicked off our Patreon membership last year. That will be firing back up. If you had membership last year, that's going to begin. You don't have to do anything different. It will just start charging your account again. But also, if you want to be a new member, we'll be creating new content for you guys. We haven't decided exactly what that's going to look like, but for sure, mailbag questions at the end of episodes will be submitted through our Patreon. And then maybe some get-togethers at tailgates. I think we're kind of envisioning that our Patreon subscription could be, the Penn State or Oregon game could be a tailgate, and your Patreon membership gets you in for free beer and food. So we're still figuring out what it's going to look like, but excited to get our Patreon kicked off. Really excited to get this season rolling. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.